All right, so the title of our conference is presentation is Adult Education Research, Identifying Factors Affecting Persistence, Progress, and High School Credential Attainment. I am Sasha Lotus. I work at Academy of Hope Adult Public Charter School in DC. I'm Director of Performance, Evaluation, and Research. And
I'm Neha Nanda, and I'm a principal economist at AIR.
okay, so today, we're going to, we already told you about who we are, but what we really, also I want to take this time, I'm sorry, we're all family, it's a small group. So I just want to introduce, we have a lot of Academy of Hope family members here. So we have our CEO, Leicester Johnson, we have Brian, Holly Ann, and Audrey. So again, we're probably going to be calling on, if there are questions throughout that we can't answer, that I can't answer, I may be calling on you all. So the first, we want to tell you about our partnership, our research findings, and most importantly, really what the research implications mean to our field, to your program. And also, most importantly, we really want to have robust discussions. So we have moments that you'll see slides. We're going to use Mentimeter, which we'll describe when it comes. We're going to see how that works. But again, it's really just to get discussion flowing from the sessions I've been in the last few days. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think people will have a lot to say, especially in our field right now. So we really want to use this time for you all as well. Okay, so Academy of Hope. So Academy of Hope, it started in 1985 as a grassroots adult GED program. So as a nonprofit, we grew from 2 volunteers and 4 students to serving over 500 students annually. And then in 2014, AOH became an adult public charter school. And DC is very rare in that it's home to 10 adult public charter schools. We're currently serving over 1,000 learners a year. And in 2017, we received WIOA career pathway funding and began offering high-level career pathways programs in technology and healthcare. And I also want to say that AOH, this Academy of Hope, is also rare even within the adult education, adult space, and that we serve learners coming in, we serve learners ages 18 to 90, 100, and also coming in at EFL levels 1 to EFL level 6. And it's mostly Native Washingtonians. Oh, damn, sorry. Oh, Naya. Okay, and our mission, and I'm going to go ahead and read it because I think it's a good one, is we support adult learners in changing their lives and transforming their communities by providing them with high quality adult education and career training that creates direct pathways to economic mobility. And now Neha is going to go.
All right. So as I said, I'm a researcher at AIR, or American Institutes for Research. And this research specifically was a part of Propel Center, or formerly the No? Is this working? Can you hear me now? What about now? Okay. All right. So I'm going to try doing it again. Let me know if you can't hear me, but I think now you can. So this research was a part of Propel Center, which is promoting resilience, opportunity, and progress in employment and learning. And what we really do is provide data-driven insights for addressing more workforce mobility related issues. So we want to address problems, challenges, barriers that learners may be facing in achieving their highest potential so that they can then get onto their path of economic mobility. So this research partnership with Academy of Hope was one such project. All right, and this is a completed research. So we will also provide you a QR code at the end of our presentation. So if you're very interested, you can go and check that out. This is how it looks. The paper is called Pathways to Opportunity, a quantitative case study of persistence and credential attainment among adult education learners in Washington, DC.
Okay, so just a bit, y'all can hear me, yes, if I speak here? Thank you. Okay, so just a bit about our partnership, our research partnership. This partnership did not happen overnight. We are so fortunate to have it, but it was before we became a charter school. Leicester, our CEO, was really envisioning having AOH be a center of research, and we developed partnerships with AIR, and it was really only in 2021, yes, that we got our first real funding. You know, not huge, but we got some funding to do this project, but it was a long time coming. Why can't I do this? Okay, there we go. Okay, and so the goals of the research partnership are, do you want me to just read it? Okay, to really explore factors that contribute to adult learners' persistence, progress, and attainment of a high school credential, and to really better understand the facilitators and constraints facing adult learners, identify areas for improvement, and ultimately expand policies and practices that best support adult learners' integration into a vibrant and growing workforce, ultimately improving economic mobility. Oh, okay, here we go. So now Menti. I am not an expert in Menti, so, and our dear colleague Kellyanne is going to maybe help us as the expert in Menti. But if you have your phones, yes, if you have your phones, they need that code. Yeah. Oh, you're so good. Oh, but then they need the QR code. Oh, okay. Do y'all know? I'm not good at Menti. Okay, so thank you. If you go to menti.com, and then you put in that code, 4178. Take a second, don't feel stressed. I'm actually never good at this. We think so. Sorry, this was the hardest part for us, toggling back and forth. Oh, good. There we go. Okay, so the QR code, again, for those of you who haven't done it, take a picture, and then the questions are really, you know, whatever you feel comfortable saying, but who's in the room? We want to know. And why did you decide to attend this session? And then the very simple question is, how do you think research can help in the adult education field? Okay. Oh, Brian. Sorry. Okay, program. No, it's wonderful. Again, we're all family here, so just whatever you want to share. Okay. Administrator, director, state staff, program manager. Okay. Yep. We got Brian. Okay. So staff, director, any teachers? It doesn't look like it. Any instructors? Instructors. Okay, great. We do have instructors. Okay, there's Wade. Thank you, Wade and Brian. Okay. So now the next question. Oh, there's student support. Oh, great. Why did you decide to attend this session? Oh, okay. We're starting to get some. Good. Okay. Okay, great. So interested in data and research takeaways, great. Know what type of research is being gathered in adult education, great. Oh gosh, research-based policymaking, excellent. I work at AOH and was aware of the study, but I haven't seen the results yet. Gain insight on the barriers, wonderful. Create ideas to better, gather ideas to better improve program. Want to improve, high school credential outcomes, wonderful. Data-driven research, Wonderful. Okay, great. So you're in the right place, hopefully. And if we're not, if you don't feel like we're responding to what you wanted out of this session, please redirect us. And now the last question: how do you think research can help in the adult education setting? And if you want to just, put some words down, we do want to have a discussion and pass the mic around for a bit.
Try this again. Helps find best practices and moves us forward. Learn more about adult ed population, inform practices, looking at trends. Adult ed is always change, and that is very true. Inform practice and policy and provide evidence of what works to support funding. Absolutely. Environmental context is different. Nugget can be helpful. We truly hope so. Leverage additional funds, prove outcomes, hire more staff.
Okay, great. We built in a few minutes to really have some discussion. So does anyone want to share either about yourself, about why you're here, or about maybe some more expansion about really what you think research is needed? Thank you. I'm going to do this. You could introduce yourself and where you're from.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Ivan Olay. I'm with the University of New Mexico High School Equivalency Program, UNM-HEP. And I think like research can definitely, when we write our grants, can help us in convincing those that are reading it why this is important. And I think everything's now very data-driven. And so using theories and stuff like that. And so I think this is why we can use the research that's out there or conduct, right? Some of our grants are also collecting data and being able to prove that our methods and our programs are effective.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Okay, well, we'll go ahead and just get continued. We'll get into actually the meat of the study. And then I have a feeling y'all will have more questions.
All right, so next we are going to take you over the meat of the study, what we did, what sample we used, what findings we had, and then Sasha is going to really help contextualize each one of our key findings. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. It was, yeah. Thank you. All right, so we had 840 adult learners in our sample that were enrolled between fall 2020 and summer 2022. So immediately you should be thinking about COVID. Yes, this data represents a time during COVID. We looked at learners who were enrolled in at least one reading, writing, math, social studies, and science course taught at a range of skill levels. We only looked at learners who had 12 or more hours of attendance, and we did not include anyone in the workforce program courses. And if you think why, then it really was because we wanted to understand what barriers really exist on that on-ramp towards more workforce oriented training programs or education programs. So yes, context of study was COVID-19 pandemic. We did look at this data. We did analyze this data using a time during which COVID had happened. And so as you look at the findings, as you try to understand what's happening to persistence and assessment data here, it is very unique and unusual to that time period. All right, so who does the data represent? We had about 53%, over 50% of our sample in the age groups of 25 to 44. Little less than 20% in the 18 to 24 age group, and the rest 45 and over. This sample also represented mostly female, with over 70% of the sample that we studied being entirely female, and the rest being male. Race, ethnicity, and disability. Over 95% Black or African American. Ethnicity, almost entirely everyone saying not Hispanic or Latino, with a very small sample identifying themselves as Hispanic or Latino. Then when we come to disability, this really represents a very interesting population here, because 20% of adult learners at Academy of Hope identified themselves as being disabled, and this is self-reported. And this is in stark contrast to about 9%, according to Census Bureau's data, that identified themselves as being disabled in Washington, DC. So disabled folks here are quite overrepresented in this population. Okay, so now this data here represents the needs assessment that all adult learners need to take at intake. They are all asked about their essential needs at intake, about housing, food and nutrition, transportation, childcare, and mental health, with the response of 1 indicating a very high need, a response of 2 indicating some need, and a response of 3 indicating no need. So we looked at those who said a 1 or a 2, meaning a very high need or some need along each of these parameters. And what we see is that among the academic learners, excluding the workforce learners, about 23% said that they had either a very high housing need or some housing need. About 24% said that they had a food and nutrition related need. 1/3 of the sample almost said that they do have a transportation need. Childcare, much lesser, less than 10%. Mental health needs, 14.9%. And again, this was all self-reported at intake. But when you see at 1 or more needs, there's about 50% of the sample saying that they had 1 or more of these needs as they came into Academy of Hope. So 772 out of the 840 were the ones who did complete the intake form on time. $840, yes.
I don't think you're
Oh, yes. Oh, that explains a lot. And I think that'll tie up to some of the findings we will come to later. Okay, so we look at averages, we define persistence a bunch of different ways. We look at number of terms enrolled and also average terms enrolled. And what we find is that about 87% of the learners enrolled for at least 2 terms. And these terms don't have to be consecutive. They can stop out and come back. About 60% said that they enrolled for at least 3 terms. 38.6% said that they enrolled for 4 terms. And about 1/4 of the sample said that they enrolled for at least 5 terms. And those who did enrolled for an average of about 3.5 terms during our study time period between fall 2020 and summer 2022. So looking at high school credential attainment, about 10% of learners who pre-tested at EFL 5 or 6 did attain a high school credential during the time period of our study. So again, these numbers, when we come to talk about high school credential attainment, we only look at those who are eligible to really apply for high school credential examination. And it takes them about 3 terms or so to attain that credential. All right, so lots of numbers here. I'm going to go through some of the key findings, and then Sasha will again go through them, trying to contextualize what it really means. However, one thing that you may want to think about is that when we look at averages, they don't tell the whole story. They can give you a little bit of an idea of what may be happening, but when we want to see at an individual level, we want to understand what is happening to that individual's persistence and what are the factors or barriers that may be preventing, then we want to use a little bit more deeper regression analysis that's better aimed at understanding how each factor in an individual's life is influencing certain outcomes. So when you look at the top 5 columns, these are all outcomes here. We look at 5 outcomes, which are the CASAS reading skill gains, meaning post minus pre. We look at the CASAS math skill gains. We also look at attendance rate, EFL gains made, and high school credential attainment among learners who were in our sample. Now, on the rows, you will look at the predictors. So we looked at several predictors and the role of each one in influencing these outcomes. So we look at the skill levels, that is the pretest scores in reading as well as math. We also looked at essential needs that we just went through, including housing needs, food and nutrition needs, transportation needs, childcare, and mental health needs. We also look at demographic characteristics and what role different demographic characteristics have in influencing these outcomes. We look at their social and health circumstances, such as disability, because we just saw that a big population at AOH, or about 1/5 of the sample, said self-reported that they had a disability. So how does that influence outcomes? While also for learners who do have these essential needs. And then attendance rate. So you will look at the attendance rate, both at the predictor and at the outcome level. So we do ask 2 different questions. One is, what is the role that attendance plays in influencing some of these outcomes, such as EFL gain or high school credential attainment? But then we also ask, what is the role that some of these other predictors like skill gains make in attending classroom? Okay, so starting with some of our key findings, the reading pretest scores, essentially what we find is that learners who come in at higher pretest scores, they do have a better chance of high school credential attainment while needing a little less direct instruction time. So on average, learners who say scored 10 points higher in their pretest scores do have a 10 percentage point higher likelihood of high school credential attainment during the time period that we saw. Then when we move to essential needs, here's one of our key bigger findings, that learners at Academy of Hope who came in with a very high or some degree of a housing need were 10 percentage points less likely to get a high school credential as compared to those who said, we don't have any high school need. So you might want to think about what might be happening here in the context of Washington, DC, that is stopping them from attaining that high school credential while not having their housing needs met. Similarly, transportation was, again, 30% of the sample at intake said that they have a very high transportation barrier or some transportation barrier. And what we learn is that those learners who do have transportation barriers, they are likely to score lesser in their skill gains, reading skill gains especially. And then there is a very interesting finding, which is that those with transportation needs do in fact attend more. So we have a hypothesis, and Sasha is going to talk more about that. But really, what this is pointing to is that those with transportation needs, while attending more, still have an 8 percentage points less chance of making an EFL gain. And then again, for mental health needs, we found that those who self-reported as having a mental health need are less likely to attend their classes. Okay, so moving on, what do the demographic characteristics predict about some of these outcomes? Some interesting findings were about Hispanic or Latino. We found a little bit of a positive influence there between being a Latino and having an EFL gain. But again, the key findings here when it comes to demographics are related to age. The young adults in our sample were less likely to attend and 10 percentage points less likely to obtain their high school credential as compared to those in the 25 to 44 years. Now, there is other research in other contexts that says exactly the opposite. So here is where the local context is extremely important. Sure. So for age, what we found is that in our sample at Academy of Hope, the young adults in that age group of 18 to 24, they were about 10 percentage points less likely to attain a high school credential as compared to those in the 25 to 44 categories. But what I was pointing to is that if you look at some other research, especially by Steve Ritter, you will see some of the opposite things happening where the young adults are more likely to attend. So that really points to the local population, the local context. Also, those ages 45 to 91, more likely to attend, but that's not really translating into any EFL gains or high school credential gains. Finally, those with disability, they are also more likely to attend, but it's not translating yet, at least in terms of the 2-year sample that we saw, into EFL gains or high school credential gains. Those with dependents, less likely to attend, and those living in wards 5, 6, 7, or 8 have slightly higher chances of making skill gains, especially in reading, but no other effects. And then we come to attendance as a predictor. What we learn here is that those who attend more are definitely more likely to make reading gains, math gains, and EFL gains. So attendance does matter. So I'm going to give it to Sasha. She's going to break down every key finding and really discuss that, what it means for them.
Thank you. Okay, and I just also wanted to say that I'm so grateful for this partnership with AIR and with Neha and Amini as well, who has helped us so much. I am not a quantitative researcher. I started as a practitioner in the adult education field, I think like most of us, and I just had so many questions, and so that's why I went on to get my doctorate in education, but I'm more on the qualitative side. And also when Neha and Amini and they would have these findings and then we would discuss them. And I would say, oh, well, this proves what I've always thought. And they were so careful. And I have to get like, no, Sasha, it doesn't prove it. It implies it. There's what's a correlation? It's a, no, yes, all the words.
Correlation and not causation.
There we go. But I think that is so important because of the rigor, and that is what the field really needs, right? We don't need people, I feel that. So let's just go with research implication. Attendance matters, right? As a teacher, as your teacher, I could tell you, yeah, that makes sense. There's something about now the study and showing it that we can say that there's a correlation, right? That better attendance is associated with higher CASA's math goals, post-test scores, and a higher likelihood of making an EFL gain and earning a high school credential. Please, yes. Oh yeah, but that's a good question. Yeah, and anytime as I am kind of unpacking this, right, really as a practitioner lens, if you have any questions about Neha, we're just going to go back and forth. Yeah, Leicester. Oh, please. Leicester Johnson, CEO of Academy of Hope.
No, on the hours piece of it, we usually test at 50 hours or above post-test. So, but there are folks in here who were below that on that in the sample. So the 800, 12 hours or more, they are counted as enrolled in DC. But it does matter, yes. And I think it,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to try to use this one. So let's pass around that mic.
On the attendance, I just wanted to make sure that, so the attendance, the sample included everybody who was post-tested or everybody? Because basically, if they were, right, so I mean, in part, the correlation is because you were able to post-test people who stayed, but the people who left early obviously weren't post-tested, and so. Okay. Sure. Mm-hmm. Right, I understand, but it.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right. Oh, absolutely, right. But I guess my point is that, no, if you want to look at the impact of the number of hours, for instance, that
Yeah.
will have an impact on testing scores. You know, if people drop out early, in a way, it's obviously you're really not getting much of a measure in terms of how many hours are required,
Right.
to see progress, because a whole bunch of people are basically dropping out, and they're going to affect your numbers. Yep. Right. Exactly. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just playing Vanna White.
Thank you very much, Alianne. Okay. So the other research implication here is, again, not a surprise, but stressors in learners' lives impedes persistence and progress. So what we did see is learners with dependence or unmet mental health needs had lower rates of attendance in their courses. And here, and Neha spoke about this, which we found was a really an interesting finding, is that learners with unmet housing needs were less likely to earn a high school credential relative to those without these needs. So again, it is comparing those who were at ABE 5, right? So everyone had the same skill level. And then of everyone who had the same skill level, the ones who had unstable housing were less likely to get their GED or their NEDP, their high school credential. So again, that intuitively makes sense. The stress of that, where are you going to do your homework, relative, and all of that. But we did find it an important finding. I'm looking, if there are any questions, please, go ahead and ask. And so here too, as a research implication, is really that's a support for wraparound studies. So as in other studies, Patterson has done a lot of research on this. Our research really does point to the need to implement intensive wraparound services that target barriers to persistence, right? So again, nothing earth-shattering, but we know that just providing education isn't enough in this field, is that we really need to provide all the support services. And the interesting thing here with support for transportation advocacy efforts, as Neha was saying, Amini and Neha found that, okay, what an interesting thing that those folks who were saying that transportation was going to be a barrier for me, it actually did not impact attendance as much as we thought it would. And as we were hypothesizing, it came to me that, Academy of Hope, along with a lot of other folks in adult charter schools and adult grassroots, really advocated, I think in 2017, 2016, 2017 or so, in order to have the Adult Subsidy Act, so that just like K through 12 students can ride buses and transportation for free to school, adults weren't able to do that. And so we really did a strong advocacy effort, and it was hard won, but we won, so that now our learners, when they say that I have, you know, I don't have the money, or I'm not, it's going to be difficult for me to come every day because I don't have the bus fare, then our student support service staff is able to give them a Metro card that then they are able to use it. So that is our hypothesis there. Yeah, please.
Okay, so you've mentioned that this was during the 20 to 22 timeframe, so we've got
Yeah.
COVID in there. When, or did you dig into the details? When did were the classrooms closed at any point in this time? Was public transportation available / not available, and then became available? And did your numbers, did you look enough to see if the numbers varied based on that early COVID window versus the later COVID window?
Yeah, do you want to speak to that? The school was just for a little bit. We went to virtual, but it was always open for the most part, so that people did have the choice to have in person. Yeah.
Oh, there was a huge dip in enrollment. Kids were home off and on. You know, at one point they open schools and then they go virtual. So that particularly during 2020, 21, it was crazy. So, you know, it'd be really interesting now to just look at as we've stabilized over this time. We're seeing some encouraging things, but certainly during this period.
Yeah. Thank you. I can go over there. Oh.
Did you ever have online classes?
Oh, yes, certainly. Yes. So we went
So they were
virtual.
attending from home without needing transportation?
That could also be within the mix as well as our hypothesis as well. But we did also have in-person classes. Yeah. Okay, and then also, as Neha was saying, there's also research implications to take a closer look at specific needs of 18 to 24-year-olds. This surprised me as an educator, is that our 18 to 24-year-olds were less likely to get to earn their high school diploma. And again, as Neha was saying, the research states otherwise. Our context, though, is within DC, we have about 3 or 4 adult charters that specifically target 16 to 24-year-olds as well. So that could be something, but it is an implication that we now as an organization really want to look at this population. Oh, and I should also say that we are now following this study up. We're really excited to do a qualitative study. And so we want to start interviewing qualitatively folks within these subgroups. So we want to get 18 to 24-year-olds and really start asking them the question so we can dig deeper into this. Any questions? Was there a question or no? Okay. Okay, and then here also another research implication is to possible support to widen the scope of measurable outcomes. And again, this has been a hot topic in the conference the last few days. The first finding that learners with disabilities and older learners had higher attendance rates, but were not more likely to make an EFL gain or attain a high school credential. A lot of that could also be the time. It was a 2-year time frame, and we all know that it takes time. And so this also calls for more longitudinal studies within adult education. But it also states that adult learners have different goals, such as improving skills needed to read to a grandchild or to volunteer in the community. And so it's really something that AOH is always thinking about is, to ensure that these learners are receiving effective instruction, that they are getting what they came here for. How can we effectively capture learners' progress towards different goals? And so that is also something that this is telling us, that beyond WIOA and all of that, there are other goals within the adult education field that we believe strongly should also be captured. Yeah, Audrey.
Sasha, could you clarify what you were saying about the young adult, like the disconnected youth charter schools in DC? Were you saying that it would be worth seeing their rates? Because I am interested in the fact that Academy of Hope has such a range of ages, and that's something that's come up in this conference, just about maybe teaching techniques that may work for an 18-year-old that might not work as well for a 70-year-old. So I'm interested in when the population is much closer in age.
Yeah.
Obviously, they can't compare that graduation rate to a different demographic, but maybe just their percentage of graduation rate for those at that 85 or something.
Yeah. And it's a bunch, again, it'd be great to have you and others in the conversation, but I'm also what's good is wondering why are those 18 to 24-year-olds coming to Academy of Hope and not those other schools? So was it perhaps that those other schools didn't work for them? Was it perhaps those are the 18 to 24-year-olds with disabilities that they just never got the support for? All these questions that I just, we don't know, but that's where I was thinking along, Andre. Okay. And then this too is something that we just now, in the context of this conference, we wanted to put out that we did study academic, and at the beginning, we took some data. We didn't do a whole lot with it for the career training programs, the career training learners. But in terms of the question is really, the question we're grappling with, or something I've always been grappling with, is in order to get folks to, for the next step, right? So that if you get your high school degree, great, that's what we're here for. And now we want you to go into and be successful in a high level credentialing program. So my question though is, if folks if they graduate, but they still have those same needs, are they going to be successful in a high level credentialing program? And so here we just took to see, again, all learners, academic learners and career training learners had needs. But as you can see, and Neha, do you want to maybe, yeah.
Okay, so definitely, like Sasha was saying, all learners have needs, but what this slide specifically shows is that there's a big difference in the needs that academic learners whose primary goal may be to get a high school credential, what needs they have versus the needs of those learners who have been able to surmount those barriers, get a high school credential, and are now trying to get a career training credential so that they can get a job in a high demand, high growth field. Here, what you see is that just for housing alone, 7 to 8 percentage points higher reported needs for housing at intake for learners that are defined as academic versus those that were in the career training programs. Food and nutrition also 7 to 8 percentage points higher among those who said that they were interested in getting a high school credential or they were academic learners compared to those who were in a career training program. Transportation, again, double the need here reported among academic learners. Childcare, not as much, but like Aubrey reported, I think that we know the reason why, because there's free pre-K in DC for starting at 3 years. Mental health also is higher reported need among academic learners. And when you look at one or more needs, among career training programs, it's about 38% versus half of our sample in academic learners who said that they had one or more needs. And really, this is what comes down to as the biggest barriers in terms of what really influences just even that high school credential attainment as an on-ramp to other career training programs.
Yeah. And so again, is there a possible need to provide alumni support to learners? And again, here's where is that we just started a program called Hope Forward program that really takes our learners who just graduated with a high school degree and now works with them to really on their specific needs that are going to make them successful in their next step. And so that's something we're very proud of and that we've just started. And we're also going to be doing some research on that program as well. So what's our timing? Okay, so we have about 20 minutes. And again, we want to go to a discussion here. And if you can go to Menti again, which I'm not, yeah, okay. Or if you'd rather just, I mean, we can do it, whatever you feel comfortable doing. Holly Ann has the microphone, so the questions, take it whichever one you want. What findings were you most surprised by? What finding was a big takeaway for you? What might concern you about sharing your day-to-day data? And what would be a big takeaway from this session? And one thing I did before the questions, I did want to talk about sharing the day-to-day data. In this presentation, we didn't talk much about it, but research practitioner partnerships are tricky because one is using administrative data that is being collected day to day in order to conduct this research. And an example I have is with Amini, who called me and said, "Hey, Sasha, just checking, do you really have a learner who's 110 years old?" And, I'm like, let me get back to you because it's a possibility. We've had folks at 90, 95. But again, it was just the date of birth was entered incorrectly. And also what that meant to be, it's so important. I also believe that our partnerships are respectful and kind and not judgmental. I mean, Amini could have judged us and said, "Oh God, your data is a mess, blah, blah, blah," but she didn't, right? And so we work together, and that's also been a great finding for me. So I just wanted to put that in. So now, again, questions, responses, please, sir.
I know you talked about the data has basically focuses on the difference between certain groups in terms of their graduation rates, but what is the overall graduation rate? Like basically, on a year-to-year basis, how many folks actually obtain a credential? And the other, I really don't know a lot about charter schools. So are they obtaining the credential by a GED, or are they getting credits, or so it's basically
Say that last part one more time.
Are they? Is a credential basically obtained through a GED, or is it through credits or other? But basically, I'll talk about graduation rates in general and see, comparatively speaking, how it fares, I guess, against a traditional GED program and see what the alternative is.
I have to say, seeing this data always makes me cringe, right? Because you want to make sure that you're doing well by the people who are there. But our graduation rate, we've got an 82% pass rate on the GED, and we offer two pathways. Audrey runs the National External Diploma Program, and then there's a GED pass rate. We exceed sector in the city and on our performance. So all of the other adult charter schools, as well as NRS EFL gains, we are well above that in terms of we're averaging around 60 to 61% on EFL gains. But I think, and that's why I think the context is really important. And this relationship with AIR is the first time we've had an external person look at our work. And part of that is to also look at where do we need to double down on supporting learners. We know we've got a significant number of learners with disabilities in our program. What should that program look like? We've got, we see gains in those classes. About a third of our population, they are at the ABE 1 and 2 level. So it is a phonics-based, science-based reading program that we are working through, as well as bringing in additional supports for our learners with learning differences. And that helped us to really start to set some we need to put these supports in. So we're using this data as a continuous improvement process.
I see your hand.
It just might be worth noting for the high school diploma that not all adult charter schools do the same thing. So if we did in DC a study with all of them, there's one adult charter school that's only NEDP as a high school diploma. There's one that is more of a credit bearing, what you would consider a traditional school where you're earning essentially Carnegie units. So it is not all the same. So I would be now I'm super interested in like, can we get all the charters together and do stuff, but it's not apples to apples for sure.
That's the point of that.
So I guess I'm listening in the context of having done persistence research. God, it's 25 years ago now through the National Center for the Study of Adult Learning and Literacy. And what emerged for us, we looked at pre-GED learners, was the importance. We did a force field analysis to look at kind of factors that were inhibiting folks, which included things like family members who weren't supportive of people's participation. But we found a really significant factor was goals. I'm really excited to see this research kind of digging into the very practical programmatic pieces you can try to control. But I just wondered if that's something that you might, to what extent you were able to explore that, or to what extent actually Academy of Hope really digs into those goals. And might that be a thread that you could look at when you get into that next qualitative phase to kind of explore some of those things? It might just be interesting to see, 25 years later, what are we seeing related to those things?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Thank you. Any other questions, discussion points? I guess, was there anything that, was there a big takeaway for you from this, or anything that surprised you? I'd be curious too. And it's great as we start our qualitative work, we're really thinking about what questions should we be asking to dig deeper. Please.
I've been talking to a lot of folks at the conference, and one of the questions, I spoke to someone yesterday about the age of our learners. As a charter school, so we grade funding. So we have the local funding, per pupil funding that we receive, which is unrestricted in DC. And then we also receive Title II funding. We owe a Title II funding through the competitive grant process. And what the local funding has enabled us to do, because part of our core mission is to serve any learner who walks through our door, is that you will see some older adults whose goals are not necessarily to get their high school diploma in our program. And I know that's sometimes controversial. And I think, Sasha, you talk about where those two tensions come together. We're able to sort of work through those tensions of, here's an adult and then who wants to be able to read to their grandchild. We believe that we should be able to do that and support them. And we have the local dollars to do that. And right now the local dollars don't say you cannot do that. So, and it's not a large portion of our folks, the older adults. The larger portion are those folks in that 36 to, but who are looking to go to work. But we do have folks who have those personal goals that we support, and it's part of our mission, and it is our intention to continue to do that for as long as we're able to. So.
Yes, thank you. Mm-hmm.
For. And then maybe every term, how close are they to meet their own goals, and how have those goals shifted? So, well, my research mind would love to get that data, throwing it out there at Leicester and any others to really, I think that's where what we need to do is look at those personalized goals and see how learners are benefiting from these programs.
Any other questions, or just the overarching themes here really were, that research practitioner partnerships facilitate more in-depth understanding. And that really, I think, is the biggest takeaway, that it's a start to start evaluating one's own program, to start asking questions, to start saying, we think this may be something wrapped around. We have a feeling that if someone has unstable housing, that may affect how they're doing in class. So it's those kind of things, working with an outside research folks that's really able to look at that for us and to have these robust discussions. And again, as I said, the day-to-day administrative data, it has constraints, and that's why it's so challenging. And I think that's also why it's difficult to have research in this field, and that we just really need to have grit and be persistence in it. You know, we just started right when the pandemic began. We switched to a Salesforce-based database, or student information system, which ultimately was great. There's a lot of learning curve, and so it houses a bunch of data that we're able to do these now correlation studies and all of that with it. But it also takes data administrators and training, not just to put the data in for compliance, but also looking at the data so that we can ask these research questions, and we want the data to be clean. So it's a whole bunch of different steps, and it's a different way of looking at your data. That's challenging. We're definitely up for the challenge because we do think it's so important. And so again, as we were saying, COVID and its implications for research and practice, it was a very specific time. It just happened, we got the funding, and so we went with it. And now we are going to build on this research. Yeah, please. Oh, possibly. That's a great question. Yeah, that might be a good, yeah, no, great. Because again, we're just trying to select our sample, or, try to get that. So, yeah.
I'm wondering if you will consider follow-up to this. So a lot of these are external factors.
Yep.
But maybe internal factors, more like what kind of instruction leads to persistence?
Yeah.
We all know, we all talk about contextualized, relevant, rigorous, and all of that. So what is the relationship between, I don't know, traditional worksheet-based
Yeah.
instruction to learner persistence and learner gain and HAC completion versus evidence-based instruction to all those? So I don't know if you looked at that or if you're planning to look at that, but where I am, we always wonder, like all the professional development that we put out and what really works and leads to HAC and gains and learners meeting their goals, the goals they come with.
Yeah, no, I'm so interested in that as well as an instructor. The hard part is finding a control group, right? I mean, that is always the hardest if you want that real rigorous. But I think that is definitely our next step, to think through perhaps how we can start doing that, maybe with other charter schools. Again, lots of thinking, but I'm right there with you. That would be wonderful.
I appreciate you taking the time, and I know that everything may not have turned out exactly the way you wanted to when you started the research program to when you finished, but I'm so excited that you got the research done. I think so often we look to our learners and we tell them there's no perfect time to get your credentials. There's no perfect time to go back to school. Stop waiting for everything to be perfect. Just get busy and get doing. The same thing goes with research. Don't wait for, well, when we get this funding or we get this time, start it now and just add up what little bits you can, because there's never going to be a perfect time to do a long-term study and have it turn out the way that you think it's going to turn out.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you for that. And also, if it doesn't turn out the way we think it's going to turn out, how valuable is that? Right. I mean, I think that's the real worth of research. So yeah, so hopefully yes, but if not, and then how can we be better? Right. We want to constantly say, how can we be better for the field, for our learners? And that, I believe, is what research does. Yes. Mhm. Mhm. No, we've been busy. Thank you. Okay, with no more questions, just thank you all so much. Last day of the conference early. Thank you for showing up. Really appreciate it.
And the QR code for the study.